From dawn till dusk, Ford trucks are with you every mile of the way. And we'd like to say thank you, Farm Bureau, for your partnership and support to help make Ford F-Series the best-selling pickup in America once again.
In a year with record commodity prices and input costs, wheat growers need to consider what management practices will pay. Dennis Pennington offers his advice on nitrogen rates and timing.
Yeah, the wheat crop is coming out of dormancy this spring and starting to grow again. We're starting in the southern part of the state, actually advancing crop growth stages. And one of the things that I've really noticed this spring is the difference in the stages of growth from south to north. In the south, things are greening up, growing, and moving much more rapidly, but it gets much less pronounced as the farther north you go. And that difference from south to north is much more pronounced this year than in past years. Now is a good time to be out scouting fields, walking them, digging plants, evaluating root systems, look at tillering, how much tillering there is out there. And then with the high price of wheat, there's opportunities. You might think you want to, well, maybe I want to fertilize for a little higher yield goal, but with the high nitrogen prices as well, you got to kind of bring that kind of in balance and in check, and really kind of look at what do I have in my crop, right now currently. So you got to get out there and scout and look, and then make decisions based on that as far as, one, how much nitrogen to put out there, and then the timing of the application. A late planted crop that maybe isn't got as much of a root system developed, less tillering, you're going to want to get a shot of nitrogen earlier in the season compared to a crop that was planted maybe a little bit earlier that has adequate root development and tiller development. Depending on which of those two scenarios you have will depend on the timing of when you want to make that application. The other question is, do you want to do a split or a single application? And with the high prices where it's at, you need to make sure that every trip across the field counts, and so you don't want to invest in a second application unless it's going to actually benefit you and it'll generate a return to you. And I would be looking at each field individually, because I've had a lot of growers tell me that they've got some fields that are looking great, and I can delay putting my first application nitrogen, and others that say, I've got a fair amount of winter kill, it was planted late, it's not as developed. So those decisions are going to look different depending on which scenario you are in. Yeah, so in terms of how much nitrogen to put on, there's a response curve. And basically what it does is, as you increase the amount of nitrogen, your yield tends to go up, and then there's a point at which it kind of plateaus, and then it'll actually start to decline as you continue to increase nitrogen. And so it's going to be pretty important to look at that in terms of deciding how much nitrogen to apply. And then the other thing to look at is not only what does that response curve look like and how much actual nitrogen you should apply. The optimum from a yield perspective might be 90 pounds of N per acre, but if you look at the cost of that additional fertilizer to get the next 5 bushels or 7 bushels of extra yield is probably not going to be enough to pay for it, especially with the high nitrogen prices. So you need to look at that kind of economically optimum nitrogen rate, which is probably going to be in that 80 to 90 pound range for most crops. And that'll depend on your yield goal and where you are in the state.